Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's agenda for the Cabinet. Firstly, I'd like to do the fire evacuation procedures, as it may be some time since you've been in this room. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, and therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located to the rear of the room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. Just to remind everybody that tonight's meeting is webcast. Live on the internet, and the webcast will be published to YouTube after the meeting, and you can check with officers for confirmation. And finally, please remove your mobile phones either onto silent or onto to be switched off. I'd be grateful for that. Tonight's agenda, I have no apologies for absence, although I do note that Councillors Cubitt and Councillor Laura James won't be with us, although they indicated that they wish to speak earlier. So just I wish them well if they're unwell. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No, thank you very much. Before us tonight in urgent matters is a paper that's been brought to us on the MALS and the lifts replacement and refurbishment. I'd like the Cabinet Member for Economic Development to introduce that and to lead us through that. Councillor Golding.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't have any stickers on it, that would help. Okay, thank you, Leader. Apologies, colleagues, for this being added quite late in the agenda, but you will hopefully appreciate that this is an item that cannot be delayed until the council meeting agenda, which happens after the summer. So you are asked to approve it to go through to the council meeting later this month. The report recommends an addition to the capital programme to replace the lifts by the Anvil in the Mall's car park, and also asks Cabinet to approve the refurbishment of the 3 lifts that go down to the main Mall's shopping centre. This is quite key in terms of timing, because obviously supporting shoppers back into the town centre is a really key part of our economic recovery post-COVID strategy, and therefore I do wholly recommend this paper to you this evening. Refurbishment is slightly more straightforward for the 3 lifts and can be supported financially through the service charge that we levy from the businesses in there. However, the capital programme needs to be altered to allow the financial, to release the finances to replace the lifts in by the Anvil. These are being recommended for replacement because they're quite small, they're also older, and they are regularly breaking down, which means that people aren't able to use them. And obviously our arts is also recovering. We do want to support that, therefore replacing those lifts is felt to be the best way forward. Thank you.
Many thanks for that. I know it's an urgent item, so we do have some visiting councillors. Would you like to speak on this item? No? Thank you very much. Then I hope that we will have agreement to, for the Cabinet to approve the refurbishment costs recovered by the occupiers within the existing budgets, and also recommends to Council the addition of 4 and 5 in the capital scheme, and to be funded from a capital sum of £0.3 of £1 million. Are we agreed that that should go to Council on next week? Agreed? Thank you very much. We move now to the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of March. It seems a long time ago. I hope they would be all in accordance with them and you are happy to agree them. Is that confirmed? Thank you very much. We move to item 5 now on the agenda, and these are appointments to the executive committees that we run, notably Basing View, the executive committee for that, and for the Manley Down executive committee. Now obviously since the election in May, there have been some changes in the portfolios, and to better reflect upon those, we would like to make some small changes on those committees. Normally it was comprised of Councillor Isaac, Councillor Eachus and myself for Basing View, but we'd like to change the membership to be Councillor Isaac, Councillor Rattigan, myself, and Councillor Hannah Golding. I hope that was acceptable to you all. Thank you very much. The Manny Down Executive Committee, once again, involves 3 members of the Cabinet. They were Councillor Golding in their previous role, Councillor Bound and Councillor Isaac. I will be taking Councillor Golding's role on that with Councillor Bound and Councillor Isaac. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
I can't.
Oh, you can't, can you? Sorry? I'm Councillor Bound, it's my apologies. So it'll be Councillor Golding, myself, Councillor Rattigan and Councillor Isaac. My apologies for that because you'll have to lead us through the local plan. Grateful. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move to the referrals from... Sorry.
Sorry, can you just confirm? Did you say yourself, Councillor?
Yes.
The laydown is excluding the leader
I'm... Okay.
and the communities planning and construction.
Then I would like to nominate Councillor Tristan Robinson. Are you happy with that? Thank you. We move now to the referrals from Council to ourselves. Firstly is the fire safety motion which was passed by ourselves. We've been joined by a visiting councillor this evening, Councillor Andy McCormick. Do you want to say anything to this?
Thank you, Leader. It's really some questions, really. I mean, it's just over 3 months, between 3 and 6 months ago that this motion was passed. Since then, we've had the 4th anniversary of the Grenfell disaster. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to ask what progress might have been made in helping residents in the affected blocks in Basingstoke, Crown Heights and Victory Hill spring to mind. What progress in lobbying MPs, and I was going to ask what government legislation, but of course the Building Safety Bill was read yesterday, and some of the things that entertains is allowing leaseholders, homeowners, 15 years to sue builders. But it still appears that they're still facing hefty bills for fire safety measures, and I know that the mood amongst many of the councillors across the political spectrum was that it was unacceptable that leaseholders should be facing enormous costs, of several tens of thousands of pounds, in addition to the costs they were having with waking watches and other things. As part of this building safety bill, there is a £5 billion cladding fund that's been announced nationally. Setting aside the question, is this enough nationwide, how much do we think will be needed for Crown Heights and Victory Hill and any other affected buildings, and do we think we'll get enough for Basingstoke? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McCall. I will do something on that, just to say that I was with Royston Smith last Sunday, and this was raised with him. I suggested that I knew this was coming up, that we write to both him and his partner in crime for the amendment to see what pressure has been put on central government through that amendment, because obviously it fell. But I'm keen to do that, to continue the pressure. I'll hand you over to my housing portfolio holder.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor McCormick. Just to confirm, subsequent to the motion, we have written to our 3 MPs. Obviously, the vote on that motion has taken place now, but we did write to our 3 MPs highlighting the problem of leaseholders being expected to pick up the cost, which, as you say, we all agreed cross-party was not an acceptable situation. We've also written to the Secretary of State, and the moment I have a response to that communication, I'll make sure that's circulated to all members. The working group which was set up when the initial issues were raised at Crown Heights have been working with the fire service on a number of tall buildings on the borough, and I think the officers and the fire authority have been doing a really good job on that. The fire authority brought forward some excellent suggestions from their learned experience from other areas of Hampshire, especially the south of the county, where they've got some more high-rise blocks, such as in Royston Smith's constituency. So they brought some good experience there. So they've been working on undertaking the relevant fire surveys. we as the council have been communicating with the freeholders of those tall buildings. I think it's worth noting that some of those freeholders have been more communicative with us than others. The vast majority, I'm pleased to say, have been open and willing to work with the council on a number of those issues and publish timelines to their residents for remediation of any work that's outstanding. Crown Heights, they failed their EWS 1 survey, however they did have the new system installed, which meant that they could then stand down the waking watch, which then lost that initial cost for residents, which is really important. So that's positive. And as you say, the second reading of the reading of the Building Safety Bill was in Parliament yesterday as well. And just on the final point of the motion that went to full council, we would all agree that it's the council's view that the costs associated with this remedial action for fire safety should not be met by those residents, and we've been making that clear in all communication. I know that there is a report on this going to, I believe, the 16th of September EPH committee. I see the chairman nodding, which is good. So we'll have a full report then where we can go through the full findings of the report and updates for residents who understandably are very concerned about the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Is there any other Cabinet member who'd like to say something? I would just like to finish then, just to confirm I was at the request of the station commander here in Basingstoke. I went to visit them to understand what they were doing in terms of their waiting watch and of course all of the fire facilities within the town itself. He indicated that he had offered fire safety checks to all of the residents of the high-rise buildings in Basingstoke, and unfortunately very few people had taken up that offer. We need to do a little bit more, I think, as a borough council to understand why people are reticent to have authorities come into their houses. I think that is an important issue for us, that we have got barriers within our town as to why people think authority is a dangerous thing to them. So I just bring that to mind, but they have said that any time that we as a council or councillors wish to, we can have visits to the fire station at Basingstoke. Obviously you are understanding of the fact that once the COVID pandemic emergency vaccination is through, they will be opening up to allow us that, and I will make that public to all councillors to understand what is done in fire safety in our borough. All right, so that offer is there, and I will make sure it's handed out to all councillors. So we take it that it's going back to EPH. The chair has nodded in that direction. So are we content to do that, Cabinet? Agreed. Thank you. We also had a referral from on a housing motion. This was about the need to understand what is good, what is poor within development, and for us to take on board, because we have our large site at Manydown, and we will be involved in the planning process for many large sites over the coming years. And of course, as we build our new updated local plan, we ought to make sure that we use the best of what's out there when writing that. I'm delighted to say that next Friday we will be visiting exemplar sites both in Chelmsford and in Cambridge to understand what others do, and I think it is important that we gain knowledge from others, but also to be able to question other people, not just our own officers or our own developers, in what is brought forward for development within this borough. I hope that we will be able to feed back from next Friday's meeting to give confidence both to the council itself, but to individual members who will be working on the local plan update, and to my cabinet colleague who will be leading us in that. So I hope that that will be sufficient for you at this time, and that we note the referral to do the best we can from the examples that we can gain across the country. Is that acceptable to cabinet?
Is this on item 7, Lee?
It is. Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Responsible. That this will be introduced into the So I will be recommending that this is discussed. Officers will be bringing a report, which is what the proposers of the motion wanted us to do, is to look at it very carefully. And I hope that when we design the policies for the local plan that impinge upon design and the influence that climate change has upon that, that we will look at this example as one of the ways forward. It should be borne in mind that the climate change and our attitude to it will be running through the local plan updates like a golden thread. And so this is obviously another opportunity for us to make that known to all involved by looking at this example carefully and seeing whether it's doable in Basingstoke and Deane. I should point out, of course, that it had a substantial amount of funding from the Welsh Assembly and from national government, and I don't necessarily think we're going to be so blessed with that advantage in our borough, but there will be developer contributions, I'm sure, and as we're working with the Low Carbon Energy Group, Basingstoke Transition Network, who I met with last night, and other groups beside, we will be looking to drive up the standards to ensure that we have a low carbon new homes being built, if even zero carbon new homes built in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. I'm grateful for that. Now, I note that a trip to Wales is always beneficial for us all. Are we agreed that we take on board that and we set a time to head off to Wales to look at these eco homes and understand what they can bring for us? Agreed? Yep. Thank you. Now we move on to the sports facilities. I'd like to introduce this by Councillor Bean. Would you like to make comment to this?
Am I on? Good. Yeah, so when we last looked at, well, this came to council previously, I think I made reference to the fact that Basingstoke, in terms of being a priority area, would be really low down the list. The first round of applications is closed. I think it was back in mid-June. That's not, and we obviously haven't submitted anything at this point. That's not to say that we won't in the future, but I think we just need to be mindful of the wider context of this fund and strategically whether an application is right for sports and leisure or actually it might be best placed elsewhere. So obviously if there's an ability to apply for funding to help with major projects, then absolutely we should do that. But at this point that we haven't identified something to do that. But that's not to say we won't in the future, and fingers are always on the pulse with these things. Officers are always looking for opportunities, and particularly when clubs come to us, we will explore every opportunity there is for funding. So there's nothing more concrete at this point. Obviously we're aware of the fund, and if it is appropriate to do so, then we would make an application.
Say something to this?
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'm heartened by that response. My initial thoughts were, as a levelling up fund, Basingstoke and Deane was already up, so we might not be eligible for the funding. But that's not to say that there may not be deserving cases that we have within Basingstoke and Deane. One of my big concerns is that we capitalise on the opportunities presented as a result of increased physical activity as a result of the lockdown, before people revert back to their old habits in the coming months. And we do, if we find an appropriate means to secure a bid, let's go for it and try and get some improved sports participation. I'm very excited by some of the proposals, not least the community sports hub that the football club are putting forward. And if there is any way we can help them, I would be 100% for it.
Thank you very much for that. And obviously just want to add that when the opportunity arises on different tranches, we will look at the guidelines and see if we can make appropriate funding requests. But it is in our mind to make sure that we use somebody else's money where at all possible. I think that's, we would want to all agree with that. But obviously to be mindful of the fact that sports has become a much greater part of well-being than it was 18 months ago. So I look forward to our requests coming forward, and I will support Councillor Bean in her hopes to make sure that we do get the money that we are deserving. Thank you for that. We'll move now to item 9, which is the highway improvement for Brighton Hill roundabout. I'm going to have this introduced by Councillor Bound to lead us through. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Golding, I forget who's who at the moment, juggle you around. Councillor Golding on this proposed improvement.
Thank you, Leader. I've got 2 lights on my microphone now, it's working fine. These proposals have my support because they enable major highway improvements planned by Hampshire County Council to the A30 Southwest Gateway to Basingstoke. Brighton Hill roundabout remains a key part of our local road network, and residents using it frequently experience long queues of traffic, which will only increase as development along the A30 continues. The proposed transfer of a small area of council-owned land in the vicinity of the existing roundabout is a key contribution from this council to help facilitate the delivery of a significant vehicle capacity improvements, which should reduce the congestion and increase the safety and pedestrian benefits for our residents using the Brighton Hill roundabout and our cyclists, who should not be forgotten. It will help maximise the value for residents of the £19.3 million of funding from the Government, LEP and Hampshire County Council towards this highway improvement. Following previous consultations, I'm pleased that these improvements have the support in overall principle of the local residents, who have been kept informed by Hampshire County Council as detailed schemes plans have developed. I note also that the proposed land dedication to a single party, which is Hampshire County Council, at potentially less than full market value, is supported by our standing orders in relation to the economic and social benefits and inward investment that will result from the completed scheme, and overall will have a positive impact on our residents. Therefore, I commend the 3 recommendations within the report to Cabinet and ask that they join me in approving them.
Thank you, Councillor Golding. I'm going to invite forward now Councillor Andy McCormick, and then I'll have Councillor Bound.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'm supportive of these proposals. The Brighton Hill roundabout, obviously being on the edge of my ward, is a subject close to my heart. It's been a long process getting to where we are now, where we've finally got the project signed off, design review done, tendering about to start, and work to start towards the end of the year. My understanding is this is a strip of land that's near the Brighton Hill Retail Park. Now, I won't ask any questions on the retail park, because I think that's something that the Cabinet will probably have to revisit quite soon, bearing in mind the sort of low occupancy rate. But the particular piece of land would lend itself to having a footbridge, and I know that a number of my residents have expressed concerns at the proposals for at-grade crossings. This was last pending a input from the police as to the safety of the crossings, and I don't expect there to be any objections lodged. However, I would like to take this opportunity to say that if it were possible to have a grade separated junction, and I understand the logistics involved in the underpasses, and that may not be a technically feasible solution, and it's a very expensive solution, but if there was any possibility for a grade separated junction, I would want it, because of the large number of people that currently use the underpasses, something like 400 people using the Pizza Express underpass in the morning peak, and something like 270 people using one of the underpasses going up towards Brighton Way. And I welcome the proposals that we have a cycleway going along Brighton Way as far as Sullivan Road. I think that it's incumbent on us as a council to support people getting from A to B under their own steam. There's a considerable amount of people that go between Brighton Hill and Southam, so we need to make it easy for them to do so on foot or on bicycle. And also noting the work that was done a few weeks ago with the LC WIP, the cycling infrastructure project. I think it's really important that we take every opportunity to promote ease of cycle use, and I think grade separated junctions, especially on our really busy roads, is a really key enabling factor. It does make me nervous that we might have large numbers of school children or large numbers of walkers, joggers and cyclists who are not going to wait at some of these grade separated junctions, having to cross 2 or 3 roads. And, you know, to me, that constitutes a risk. But obviously, the experts on this are the traffic police, and if they don't object to it, I don't think we've got a leg to stand on. But I'd welcome any comments from the Cabinet on that.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Bound.
Thank you very much, Leader. We know Basingstoke is famed for its roundabouts, so this is a significant moment, I think, for us as a council and a town, when some years ago Hampshire County Council announced their programme of road improvements, whether it be improving the A340 in Aldermaston Road, whether it be the Thornycroft roundabout work, and to finish their programme with what is one of the largest and I suspect most important schemes of that programme is truly significant. I think a town of our size, many of them would be really grateful for the level of investment that we've had in infrastructure that frankly we take for granted. The ring road, the roundabouts, which I think we all adore, or many newcomers to Basingstoke learn to love after a period of time, I'm sure. And to improve this key corridor from the southwestern Junction 7 is really important, and to finish all of that work. And I think it's really also important for us to understand that there is some short-term pain. We know roadworks are not easy for anybody, and it's significant that this piece of infrastructure improvement will take a programme 2 years to happen. That will not be without its pain around that area, but very warmly welcome this significant piece of investment. And as Councillor McCormick says, all of these junction improvements and road improvements have made significant steps in improving the safety for pedestrians and cyclists. So I think we should welcome that as well, with our ambition to change the type of transport that we all use. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bound. I'm grateful. The recommendation in front of us is to endorse the updated highways improvement to be undertaken by Hampshire County Council at Brighton Hill Roundabout, as set out in the report in front of you. It approves the dedication of this council-owned land at and in the vicinity of Brighton Hill Roundabout to Hampshire County Council for nil value for the incorporation of public highway to support the implementation of the highway improvements. This accords with S123 of the Local Government Act of 1972, where a disposal at less than best consideration in the case of land dedicated may proceed where social and economic and environmental benefits will be achieved. The delegates detailed terms and conditions associated with the dedication of the land and the deed of dedication and related documentation and other supplementary legal and other agreements that may be required to facilitate the highway improvements to the Executive Director of Corporate Services, the S151 officer, in consultation with the Executive Director of Resident Services and the Head of Law and Governance and the Monitoring Officer. Are we agreed to move this forward on the basis that it will be a vast improvement on the highways structure within the town? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We move now to a very important piece, if I may say so. It's the Members' Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Forum. And the report in front of you is, in my view, vital for the improvement of us as a borough and to be a much greater and inclusive council, but also through us as a council, we can do so much more for our residents. So I'd like the foreword that was written by Councillor Bound to introduce this piece. Councillor Bound.
Thank you very much, Leader. Again, probably a very significant moment, I believe, for our council. Since I've been a councillor here, equality, diversity and inclusion has come a long way. And I think all members would appreciate and understand the significance and the role that councillors can play in demonstrating leadership when it comes to equality, diversity and inclusion. It's really easy, isn't it, to sign up and agree with what Horizon 2050 said about creating a borough where everybody can thrive and everybody can benefit from the opportunities that our borough provides. This document is very clear. in setting out the role of the forum and how it will work. I think what it doesn't really underline, and I'm not sure a council paper can ever underline, is really how important it is that we grasp that role as elected members, that we represent our residents, that we demonstrate that leadership. We have good partnerships across the borough, and it's really important that we use them to the benefit of our residents, that we encourage our partners to share some really great initiatives that are happening. And I'd like to mention specifically some of the things that are happening at Hampshire Hospital Foundation Trust. Some of the initiatives that they have there, I think every public service could learn from. It is our role to be an advocate for our communities and help everybody understand perhaps a different view from the view that we see as individuals. And I suspect as elected representatives, we're one of the few people who can do that in our communities. It is our civic role, our civic purpose, and our civic responsibility to do it. So we can lead in local government in doing these things. I believe we need to lead in these things. We have a clear vision with 2050, and this paper sets out how we can deliver on that vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And before I ask Councillor McCormick to speak, I just want to pay tribute to the Basingstoke MP Maria Miller for her work over many years, but of course her work over the last year has been exceptional, and I think we can build on what she has at least found a way to lead us on. So I want to pay tribute to her. But Councillor McCormick, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'm very pleased this has come forward, because as a diversifying borough, as we become more diverse, so we need to increase the importance of equality and diversity work. Just a few questions really in terms of, you have a chair nomination. I'm not sure who it is, maybe you'll name them in a minute. How many members are going to be on this panel? How often will it meet? And does it have any terms of reference drawn up, or will it be down to the members of the panel themselves to draw up the terms of reference?
I'll just deal with the terms of reference. They're at the back of the papers. I hope that they would meet your approval. Obviously, the purpose and objectives are there. The view is that it would meet at least 4 times a year. That will give a balance and will give opportunities for our partners to come forward and express what they're doing in terms of their work in tackling discrimination and ensure inclusion within the borough. It is important. I think it is a recognition that a member has served for 26 years on this council, and the nominated chair will be Councillor Dan Putty initially. Obviously, you and the other group leaders will have an opportunity to have a representative on this forum, and of course it will have the support not just of great council officers, but will have the support of, I hope, the whole of the council in moving through its objectives. And of course, the great thing about having a new forum like this is, if we think it should be altered or changed, I'm sure that we can do that with quiet words to the elected members who are part and parcel of it. So I bring it to you. I hope that the purpose and the objectives and the terms of reference are acceptable to you all. And of course it will be, as the recommendation states, it will be up and running for 12 months, and then we'll review it at that point. I hope the review will be positive and will allow us to move on with this and give it greater bite and ability to question our partners, but also to help them make sure that we deliver resident services in wherever it comes out, whether it's the health service or whether it's in simple things like education, making sure that people understand they've got the right books to read, and we can help them in ensuring that English is not such a barrier for so many people within our communities. So I hope that will be okay. I hope that when we get to council in 10 days' time, we will be able to endorse this and move ahead with this forum under the leadership of Councillor Dan Putty, who has experienced discrimination himself, as he very eloquently highlighted previously. But I think your choice, you group leaders' choice of who you put on it, will be very vital to the way it works and how it works in the future. So we all have responsibility with this forum. So I hope that is acceptable to everybody and that we endorse it as a cabinet. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We move now to agenda item 11. Item 11, which is the capital programme outturn. And I'd like the Cabinet Member for Finance and Major Projects to introduce this paper.
Thank you, Leader, and good evening, councillors and officers. This is the capital programme outturn for 2020-21. I'm pleased to submit this report to Cabinet and then on to Council. The report examines our capital spend and it records an underspend for the year of 12.4% or 4.58 million. That was largely due to the impact of the delays caused by the pandemic. However, this council continues to maintain a significant capital investment programme. In year, that amounted to 32.391 million. You'll see on page 2 of the report that Cabinet is requesting Council to note 8 points, which you may care to read out, Leader. But if I can just focus on the 3 points that the Cabinet requests Council to approve. It's asked us to approve capital programme changes in Appendix 3, including scheme veerments relating to the Aquadrome, open space improvements and Wade Road wash down facility. Secondly, an increase in the Aquadrome asset management scheme of £524,000 funded from a veerment or rephasing, if you like, of £383,000 from future years funding for sports and recreation, section 106, and a further £141,000 funded from capital receipts. And then thirdly, it sets out a revised capital programme for 21-22 to 24-25 and the accompanying programme financing. Just on the asset management plan works for the Aquadrome, these are needed to ensure the short to medium term maintenance of the Aquadrome, so it continues to offer good facilities for our residents and their families. And it follows a condition survey by our advisors ACOM. The latest forecast cost is 1.663 million, and that's proposed to be met from 1.522 million of budget already approved in the capital programme, plus £141,000 funded from unallocated capital receipts. As has been reported, the works include having to deal with asbestos, the extent of which will only be known when the works commence. So a contingency is in the estimate, but some element of financial risk obviously remains. There are a number of budget changes to the capital programme since the last report to Council in February, including Section 106 contributions of £53,000 to support the extension of the St Luke's Hall in Overton, and £23,000 from the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles to complete the installation of electric vehicle charging points in Whitchurch and Overton. Since the last update in February, additional capital grants have been notified to us, including an additional £232,000 of disabled facilities grants income, and that's important because there's been quite an increase in residents who need help with disabled facilities during the pandemic. Finally, a risk assessment has been completed in accordance with our risk management processes and has identified no significant residual risks, red or amber, that can't be fully minimised by existing or planned controls or additional procedures. And that's, so I recommend the report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. I'd like to call forward Councillor Andy McCormick. Would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, Leader. I note the contents of the report. Normally, if there was a £4.5 million underspend on £37 million, there would be some questions to ask, but I think it's fairly obvious the impact the pandemic has had on construction activities. I'm just intrigued with point 2.7 on page 62. It says, catch-up is anticipated and delayed plans works are forecast to take place, but perhaps a little bit more detail on how it's expected for catch-up to take place. That would, in my mind, involve employing more people, and there may be some additional costs that may come out the back of that. Having said that, though, I think it is a desirable objective to get our capital programme back on track, so I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it.
Councillor McCormick, you have to forgive me. I didn't quite catch which section you're referring to.
It's 2.7. The catch-up on the anticipated delayed planned works.
I think if that's a general reference, then yes, we will do everything we can to catch up on the works that were due to happen in that financial year, but were held up by everything that beset us as a result of the pandemic. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I'm happy to let the officer come in here.
So if I could just add that obviously the report seeks council approval as well to rephase a number of activities. So where that rephasing has happened and what the new timing will be is reflected in the new programme. I think as Councillor Isaacs indicated, catch-up is a general term in terms of what it's really alluding to is that we expect to fully complete these works, but obviously on a later timescale than we'd originally planned, and the rephasing in the report actually demonstrates when that will actually happen.
Are we content at that? Excellent. Shall we move now to the recommendation? I won't go through the Cabinet Request Council to note. There's 1 to 8 on that, but I think it is worth once again confirming that Cabinet requests Council to approve the capital programme changes as detailed in Appendix 3, including the scheme changes detailed in paragraph 4.6 relating to the Aquadrome, further details in 4.3, open space and Wade Road washdown facility. An increase in the Aquadrome scheme, I think it is important to both us as a council, but to our residents, that we ensure that that is a safe and pleasant place to enjoy your leisure. So the refunding and the changes on the funding is an additional 3.83 in future years funding from the Sports and Recreation 106 scheme, and a further 1.41 million to be funded from the capital receipts. The revised capital programme for 21-22 to 24-25 is as shown on the appendix, and the programme financing as shown on paragraph 1. But I totally accept your comments about overrunning of costs, and I'm sure that we as a cabinet will be ensuring that we nail down the costs as well as we can on every capital programme. Are we agreed that we can move these forward to council? Yep. Agreed. Thank you very much. Once again, I'm grateful, but once again, it is Councillor John Isaac for agenda item 12, which is the revenue outturn report and the COVID-19 financial impact on 2021. Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Leader. As you say, this is the revenue outturn report for 2020-21. The report covers the outcome of our revenue budget. It's been the most uncertain, unpredictable year for our finances for many years because of the pandemic. That we ended up with a favourable variance of 2.55 million, I think demonstrates the strength of this council's finances and our ability to withstand a major shock, and also the capabilities of our finance team and the robustness of our financial processes. The fluctuations experienced over the financial year included unbudgeted increased expenditure of 1.37 million, reduced income of 4.69 million, including losing £620,000 that we'd expected in terms of car parking revenue, and 8.05 million of additional costs. We have, however, maintained financial discipline by reacting early to the emergency and taking early measures to cut our costs, including in terms of staff recruitment, where we are to save £630,000. We did not know, could not know at the time, the extent of any government assistance that we might or might not receive. As it turned out, most of our pandemic impacts have been offset by government funding, totalling £11.56 million. The overall effect in the financial year of COVID-19 in terms of cost pressures on the council was £1.18 million. As we've discussed previously, some planned activity was delayed by COVID-19, so this report recommends carry forwards of £460,000 into 2021-22, plus a carry forward of £890,000 of COVID-19 grant to enable us to support our community. And I'm pleased to say a transfer to the MTFS risk reserve, because we are still in a period of risk. We're not out of the pandemic yet, or to the risk reserve of the remaining surplus of £1.2 million. We propose also to utilise surplus to support council priorities by making in-year allocations of £1 million to the Climate Change Reserve and £1 million to the newly created Economic Recovery Fund Reserve. Grants of £35.74 million were received from government in that year, with this council passporting, acting as agent, if you like, these sums to local businesses, which has been very important in enabling them to continue in business. As of March 2021, there is a balance of 3.44 million to be paid out during 2021-22. To conclude, the effects of the pandemic on our finances will continue to be closely monitored and timely interventions will be taken as required. I'd like to pay a particular tribute to the Executive Director of Corporate Services for the work that she and her team have done during the most testing year. I think there's been a magnificent effort on the part of that team, and I know that it's involved many long hours. I'd also like to give my appreciation to my predecessor, Councillor Golding, for the great work that she did during that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Councillor McCormick, you've asked to speak.
Thank you, Leader. It was just really a question on parking revenue. I note we've taken a hit on parking revenue because people haven't been driving into town. I think we'll probably have to continue taking a hit on parking revenue because whichever way you look at it, either we have to incentivise people to go back into town, or if we don't do that, they won't go back into town, and so we won't have the parking revenue. So I'd be interested to hear Cabinet's thoughts on that. Now I know there's also an ongoing consultation on East Drop Park. I won't mention that, but I would also like to hear any ideas that we might have if we're not going to have as much parking revenue, where we might find alternative sources of revenue that don't impact our economy. So I think it's really important. We've got another paper coming up about the town centre economy. I think it's a top priority for us that we revive the town centre economy, and I see parking charges or alleviating them in the short to medium term as a key component of that.
We're grateful for those thoughts, Councillor McCormick. Obviously, as we move out of the pandemic and the world opens up again, it will be a very different place. I don't know how many people will use the car parks, but I'm sure that Councillor Isaac and the finance team will ensure that we have a budget that reflects truly what we bring in revenue, and we will always be looking for new sources of revenue, just the same as we'll be looking for service increases and cuts if we should make them. But we're just starting the budget process now, and I assure you that you will be informed as we move through it of what is applicable and what is not applicable to the coming year. So, Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to take this moment, as I was in charge of the finances for most of the last year, to thank the director involved, but also all the staff working underneath her for really what was an incredibly challenging year for our finances. And I am so proud of the work that was done. We really rose to every challenge that was set. And I think, the report does speak for itself. But I think, we've done so much in this past year in terms of adapting to where we work in terms of officers, but also as members and how we interact with everyone. But also the extra grants and really getting those lifelines out to people and residents and businesses who need it. Our finance team has gone over and above to get those out quickly and to make sure that we are supporting as many businesses as we can. So I cannot thank the teams enough. I've really enjoyed my 2 years working with them. I will miss you, but I'm not going far.
Thank you for that. Before I move to the recommendations, I'd like to echo everything that's been said by Councillor Isaac and Councillor Golding. I think the finance team have been amazing, especially like the grants girls. They just do it without thinking, and they're always cheery when I come rolling in and say, how many grants are you giving out? So I do think a sense of optimism from them, because they do feel that they are helping people. So from the top down, Sue, for your work in leading the team, right down to people who've not been here for very long and our apprentices. I think we are blessed to have such a great team looking after our finances. So I move now to the recommendation that's in front of us. The Cabinet notes, and I won't go through all of them, but the Cabinet requests that the Council approve the transfer and out-turn surplus of 2.55 earmarked to the reserves, the COVID grants reserve of 0.89 million, the budget carry forward reserve of 0.46 million, and the MTF's risk reserve of 1.20 million as detailed in section 3. Are we agreed to send that to Council? Indeed. Great. Thank you very much. We move now to agenda item 13, which is the Economic and Planning and Housing Committee have sent us this task and finish on the policy of SS9. It was started before I was the leader, but I was happy to see this finish, not just because it is timely with our local plan update coming through, but also because we ought to have full stops at the end of our work. But I want to pay tribute to a councillor who's not here tonight, Councillor Laura James, who headed that map and whose determination to get it finished is noted. I'm going to have this introduced by the chair of EPH, who will confirm the findings, and obviously we will rely on the papers in front of us. Obviously there are pink papers here, and if we have to move into confidential session, I'm happy to do so. I I wouldn't expect it from the introduction, but if we did need to, I'm happy to do so. But look, let's all try and get through this together and understand what you as a task and finish group we're trying to achieve and what more you want from us as the administration. Councillor Stuart Frost.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo your comments in thanking Councillor Laura James, who did a sterling job of pulling this task and finish group together rather than a map. I ask that Cabinet considers the three top line tasks and also the further 9 recommendations, okay, further on in the report for work. However, noting the fact that I have 2 colleagues from the council here, from the committee here, I will be very brief because I'm sure that they have a lot to talk about on it. But the 3 proposed recommendations were 1, in the local plan update, policy SS9 should remain unchanged in the local plan. However, it was thought that clarity and confirmation of whether there is an agreed legal definition of ancillary retail should be sought. Number 2, the role of Cabinet. The group recommended that additional checks and balances need to be introduced to Cabinet decisions on large-scale projects with values greater than £100 million. The £100 million was just a figure. We think that should be debated and either reduced or increased accordingly. And that a root and branch review of the procurement procedures for large projects is linked to oversight and scrutiny. And the third one, which kind of pulls in the, I suppose, the large project area, was oversight of large projects, that the Task and Finish Group felt that the evidence presented displays a significant planning risk with regards to conflict from the town centre trade and potentially a commercial financial risk on the town centre itself. There is a need, okay, for a structured process of oversight before, during and in retrospect on all future large projects valued in excess of, say, £100 million, to support the Cabinet through the decision-making process. Such would benefit openness, transparency and good decision-making best practice, and it's further suggested that the Chief Executive takes the responsibility for all major projects, reviewed annually in their appraisal. There were 9 other areas of work, okay, that the Task and Finish Group suggested, and having looked through most of them, should Councillor Bound be minded, the first 4 could be wrapped up in his maps, okay, regarding the policies for the local plan. And that's what I suggest would happen there, which would then leave, the Cabinet just to consider number 5 through to number 9. And I hope that would be acceptable to Cabinet. But I look forward to hearing your comments. And I then also pass over to my my 2 colleagues. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that introduction, Councillor Frost. I'm going to get the introduction to this from Councillor Bound, and then we'll obviously have Councillor Harvey and McCormick to put their points.
I think very helpfully, Councillor Frost. We can deal with those points, can't we, quite quickly. I'd like to, as everybody has said, thank the PH Committee Task and Finish Group for all of their great work. Members are now aware of the timetable for the local plan update and the review of the policies within it. I think it's fair to say I think all of our joint priority will be protecting the town centre, and that is key. How we do that, of course, we'll see as we go through the work, because we've got lots of strands, haven't we, as far as town centre strategy. We've already talked about parking strategies, etc., etc. But to inform those conversations, I think it's right to recognise that this is an important piece of work to inform those discussions, and I'm quite happy to take that recommendation forward as far as the local plan members advisory group, and also pleased that so many of the people who are on the Task and Finish group are participating in that map as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, you were first in today, so you get the first go.
Thank you, Leader. I appreciate that. I also want to thank the other colleagues who sat on the panel. former Councillor Dave George, Councillor Cubitt, Councillor James, myself and others were very much involved in the process throughout. And also the officers, because they gave a tremendous time to this particular task and finish panel and contributed tremendous experience to the analysis and to the work that we did. And we couldn't have done it without them, and their involvement was superb. I think one thing it did show to me, which was interesting, was the use of task and finish panels as a tool for the council going forward, as a piece of oversight, as a piece of review. And I know we'll get on to discussing all of that later in the year, but I do think it's worth examining just that particular example of this is the first time I've ever done this kind of big, deep analysis, and it worked. It felt like it worked because we got to grips with something that was historic, and we understood it in a way that was important. We got to grips with what it meant perhaps for the here and now, but more importantly than anything else, it was looking to what happens from here on in. We can talk about the past, but the past is what happens from here on in, really. And in that spirit, I think the idea of examining the major projects of this council such that we are all on board and we're all moving forward together was really an important direction to consider. I think there are some good examples of that already in the council, and I'd like to commend those who were involved in the Many Down Overview Committee as an example of where the authority can scrutinise itself as it goes along. There is a sense of taking people on a journey, on a major project, and that's just one example. There are obviously the maps and others that are related to other major projects, but I think it's the transparency of that process to allow oversight of the major projects, which was the core that came out of our work. SS9 is fit for purpose, there's no two ways about that. I think the policy stands out in terms of the analysis that was undertaken. The question was really over the legality, the legal definition of the word ancillary, and that word became very important in the analysis. What do we mean by ancillary? And we felt we had a very clear understanding from the old local plan. Going forward into the new local plan, I think that equally is relevant to the debate, and the policy stands up to scrutiny, I think, in that regard. And as Councillor Bowers says, we'll go through that process, won't we, in terms of the local plan map when it goes through. I think it further highlights the cross-party work in terms of views expressed on the big things, because members of the public will want to see that. They want to see us successful as a council. We want you to be successful as a cabinet, and we as backbenchers have a role to play in that in terms of overview and scrutiny. That process can be, as Councillor Frost describes, 100 million in terms of what is a major project. Let's define that, if that helps. But the idea being, this isn't everything. This isn't meant to be about everything. This is meant to be about the major projects of the authority, and there may be only 4 of them, or 3 of them, or 5 of them, but that's the focus. What are they? In my mind, it's the town centre, it's the leisure park, it's Many Down, and so in my head, that's where I was thinking of a major project in my work on this. I like the way that the town centre map is working, and I think, the way that we've had those conversations so far have actually brought out a tremendous amount of interesting conversation about the future, really, and that presents interesting conundrums for then how we deal with other major projects. But this process was very worthwhile. I think it was done with a positive cross-party spirit. I welcome the way you've approached it as Cabinet, and thank you for that. And I'd like to see the recommendations taken forward and work with you on them. To achieve them, really, and to make them something of worthwhile in the council through the constitutional review, through the local plan review, through the work you do as cabinet, so that this council can continue and should be successful on our major projects.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. That was excellent. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Leader. Major Projects Committee. I think that for me, the jury's out on that. It either may have not enough work to do, or it might have too much work to do, depending on what we define as a major project. Now, we've potentially got quite a few of them in the pipeline. Looking at the recommendations, mention was made with EP3 and the Malls and Festival Place as jewels in the crown. But I'd like to see that widened a bit to include the top of town, because I think the top of town is probably where we are, our need is most acute in terms of preserving the top of town. It is a draw for people to come into Basingstoke. And also, I think, not wanting to delve into the messy detail of West Ham Leisure Park, there's a potential conflict there between West Ham Leisure Park having retail on it and the town centre, and also some of our nearby retail. I'm thinking specifically the retail parks at Brighton Hill on the A30 that are not that far away. So I think we need to be careful on that one. But all in all, I mean, I'm quite pleased that this piece of work has come to fruition. It has lifted the lid on what's been going on, and I would urge the Cabinet to consider tasking the scrutiny committee to look at what lessons can be learned from this. Not least, you know, we need to get better as a borough at scrutinising our decisions and ongoing activities.
Thank you, councillors. I'm grateful for your input. We are a forward-looking council, so I don't want to delve too far into the past. I think there is some merit in what's been brought forward to us, and as the Cabinet member for the local plan has said, that these thoughts will be incorporated into our world. I do want transparency and openness in our decision making, and to give, because it will provide confidence not just to you as councillors but to our public that we are making the right decisions, we've taken the right course of action having reviewed everything, and that we are happy to scrutinise those decisions as we pull them out. I see the role as a scrutiny world. I think there is a committee to do that. I don't think there is a particular need to have another scrutiny committee. But I do understand that when things go wrong, as they quite often do on major projects in terms of delays or hiatuses, that we do get back together to review them properly, and that the Chair of Scrutiny has the right to call us in at any time to make sure that the Cabinet is clear on it. But the right number, I don't know what the right number is, but I agree with Councillor Harvey that there are only a few large projects that should be reviewed in this. Rightly said that the Manydown Overview Committee has done a good job, but will need to continue to do a good job over the next 15 years, perhaps, as we roll out that project, not just for the north, but obviously as it becomes the south, and we understand what that piece of land will provide for us. So I'm not going to, on the basis of tonight, say exactly what we will pick up, but I do think there is an opportunity to either be back here at Cabinet again or through our working group leaders to hone what we give to our local plan world, to say this should be the standard and the mantra for our major projects, and to make sure that we don't take so long to come out with recommendations. It is a great pity to me that this has been delayed by legal action, COVID, and all of the other distractions for this task and finish group, but it is an important piece of work, and I support it in general terms, but the specifics I would like to work through with Cabinet colleagues until it is right, not just for you as group leaders or members of that map, but for us as a council, but more importantly for our residents to know that we have that openness and transparency. So I will leave it with my Cabinet colleagues. We will work it through, and of course, as always, you have the right to challenge us at any time over anything. Thank you. So if we are content in Cabinet, then we will move this to Councillor Bound to work through the plans and see what can be incorporated in SS9 to give some more strength and to ensure that major projects, whether through John, can be scrutinised more fully, but with a certainty of eye and a quickness of delivery. Are we agreed with that? Of course, sorry, John, I didn't see you raise your hand.
Yes, I think the group has approached this in a very constructive way, and I think it's important that lessons are learned. I agree with colleagues that many of the points raised here, the recommendations, are really for an opportunity in the local plan update. I think there are perhaps opportunities to scrutinise decisions before they're made, which are not fully utilised currently, but you know, it's something that perhaps the constitutional working group can look at. But the main point I wanted to make is that I think it's important that we all recognise, and residents recognise, that we do have extensive programme management oversight in this council, and there was a report submitted in January to the scrutiny committee on this, and I think it's worth just reading out that we have a corporate programme management office, and that is a centralised business function specifically created to support strategic and service level programmes and projects. The goal of the centralised, or if you like, Centre of Excellence office is to standardise the programme and project-related governance processes and facilitate the sharing of resources, methodologies, tools and techniques supporting the council, portfolio holder and service level plans and provide assurances. So we have I think, a good network of boards, and we also looking at our major projects, and we also have something called the Corporate Programme Board, and that meets every 6 weeks to assess the progress on all programmes and significant projects, and that is led by the Chief Executive. So I just want to make clear to our residents what's already in place and has been in place since 2019.
I'm grateful for that, Councillor Isaac. I think it is important that we stress that we have at play some very good oversight, and I think it is important that we stress that. Well, look, we've had that recommendation moved on, that we review it. I'm grateful for everybody's attendance today. It is so good to be back in person with you all in the chamber. I look forward to our next council meeting within here. And of course the council meeting in the Haymarket next week. I'd like to close the meeting now and thank you all for your time and attendance, and wish you a good night. Thank you.